Exactly.
Yeah. So I think this is a good spot.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Oh,
Can you just look into the camera and clap?
yes.
Wonderful
Okay,
stuff.
so we got the clap done.
Yeah, you guys were having such a great conversation that I was just like, I'm just gonna
I
start
was like,
recording
this is
and
probably stressing
we're gonna.
JP out right now.
No, not at all. I was enjoying the conversation so much. I was like, I'm just gonna I can zone in. Nobody's gonna give me a hard time about paying attention to this. You guys just fucking zone in, and then we're like, here we go. We're going.
Yeah,
We're recording.
here we go.
Everything's all
Okay.
good.
So now that I'm done blabbing,
Nah,
this
dude.
is what the guest is here for.
Hey, guys.
Yeah.
We're joined by Rayvin today.
Rayvin Rey, our old friend,
Old friend. It's been a while.
We haven't seen you in 5 years,
Probably closer to 6.
right? I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've you and I have chit chatted here and there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we
that's been nice.
we always
up,
keep in touch,
mhm,
which is nice. Not so much me and Steve, but it's cool.
It's
It's so happy to see.
I don't talk
I
to
was
nobody.
thinking the other day how good it is to see you like genuinely happy.
Thank you.
Like, because I remember working with Steve, and Steve had some rough days,
Oh.
but and like you always knew you were like such a great person, but you were kind of like, I'm gonna stay over here. But like talking to you on FaceTime the other day was so nice. Like I was like, wow, I'm so happy to see him like so happy. Genuinely just like at peace, not like pissed off. I mean, it was work, so of course, but still, like it's
Well,
so
thank
nice.
you. I'm happy that you're doing well too. We did have a nice mini podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
so
great.
fun.
We had such a nice conversation that I think really propelled
Yes.
this conversation that like we got nothing to worry about. It's always
Yeah,
gonna
like I
be-
feel like I would have been a lot more anxious coming here.
Yeah. I mean,
100%.
yeah.
Not because, but like we've always, like me and JP always have had like a chill, like easygoing relationship. But
Absolutely.
I feel like coming here to do this,
Mhm.
and you were going to ask me before, like how it is that I sit down and do this by myself. It feels so confronting to sit down and do this with other
Yeah.
people. Like
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh shit. Like,
So go ahead, ask her.
Who hurt you?
my dad.
No, we'll get there. Yeah. Oh wow, that was
Wow,
quick.
the first person to answer.
Wow.
The first person.
All right, we'll
I mean,
get
we'll just start
we'll
at
get
the
there,
beginning.
but we'll get there. But
Yeah.
we're gonna eat in more.
That was like
Normally
the-
we say that like a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's true.
Like you're the vulnerability queen is here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know you from working together. All three of us worked together
Yeah.
at one point, and I think back then all three of us were a lot different versions
Way
of
different.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why
100%.
don't as somebody on the podcast like give a little bit of like what it was like for you to be friends with both of us years
Oh.
ago. Years ago.
It's so funny because I was friends with you guys when you were like starting to not be friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And JP
Oh.
JP was really struggling with this because I got like the friend side of this
Wow.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was.
You didn't know.
Yeah, I was so oblivious to anything that wasn't like.
me and JP would end work and we would go sit in the car and smoke and we would and it would be like, how's things going with Steve? And it was like when you guys were moving out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Those
was
were rough days for everybody back then.
Yeah. I mean, all of us.
Brutal stuff.
I was high on life.
Every day. All the time.
Wild times.
Yeah.
Wild times for us. Yeah. Oh man.
It, like I said, I just got to see like that very far removed version of Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Steve.
I was a really good bartender.
Great at your job. Love
Yeah.
what you do.
I'm like sitting there to Raven like, yeah, he just doesn't know how to make drinks, bro. Like that.
That was not the conversation.
Imagine I was just like, yeah, you can't even
He
make an old
sucks,
fashioned.
man.
Like,
He doesn't know what the fuck
Imagine.
he's doing. Yeah, so Steve was doing his thing, and JP, I feel like you were like starting to walk like your path.
Mhm.
Like you were seeing that you wanted something different and kind of trying to find your way onto the road.
Mhm.
And Steve was kind of like the people now at the bar that is like, I don't know if I want to, I love you, but like, I don't know if I want to hang out with you anymore, man. Like you are not, what are you doing? You know?
That was right around when I got sober from cocaine.
Yeah.
That was like, but
Yeah,
like,
we were not in alignment. I didn't even know that word back then.
You guys were like totally on your,
you know, I did coke for the last time with you.
Probably.
Yeah. It was a
I don't even
snowstorm.
remember.
It was a snowstorm.
Shocking.
We stayed up the whole night. It was a snowstorm.
Oh, when we walked to the Chinese place?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, we
had.
got like a fucking like 36 rack and went to the Chinese
Oh my
store.
God.
And we got it late at night and like drank the whole thing and went to bed so late. Like, and I was breaking up with my girlfriend the next day, and I was like, this is it for me.
Yeah.
This is it. But I still had a lot to
I didn't know
figure
I
out.
was the girlfriend he was breaking up with.
I did break up with my girlfriend. Well, we broke up. She broke up with me.
And you guys were breaking up.
Yeah.
And then I just saw you guys doing this together. And I think I reached out to you and I was like,
Wow.
shit,
Yeah.
like, this is great. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are good. Like, what's going And it was really good
Mhm.
to see you guys, like, put this together. And I'm so grateful to be here because, like, I mean, really, who thought we'd be here?
Yeah. It's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is nice. I think it's just starting to become a theme that like full circle moments
Yeah.
are part
Yeah.
of this podcast.
100%. 100%.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
We had some deep conversations back then.
Yeah.
We were going.
We, like, did this in the car after work.
You remember, where did we go though? Do you remember where we went out to lunch before you moved to Florida?
I don't think so.
Fuck.
We went out to lunch?
Yeah, oh, damn, she didn't even fucking remember, bro.
Damn.
Full
If
circle
you-
moment. Full
if
circle
you-
moment for me.
If you
Maybe.
gotta jog my memory.
No, like we weren't working together anymore, but I knew
Uh-huh.
that you were leaving.
Okay.
And we were like, let's like go out to eat before like I leave.
Wasn't it?
I think it was like Hudson Taco. That sounds like.
Yeah, it was something like I feel like
It was-
I almost feel like it was Beacon.
It could have been. Maybe you're right.
It would
I
have
almost
made
feel like we
sense because
came
weren't
here.
you living over here then?
Yeah.
You were definitely working.
You were
on
definitely
Melzinga.
over here.
Yeah, I probably
you were
just
at
moved.
Melzinga.
I had probably just moved over here.
Right.
Actually,
Sometimes
that
you just
makes-
gotta
see,
jog
like,
the memory.
Bro, I'm starting to realize I'm like, bro, I remember
You
things so
lose
differently, bro.
so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, and it's not like you don't remember. It's just that like you remember it differently,
Mm-hmm.
and you like mix up the dates, and then like it's
Yeah.
like when you thought something was true for so long,
Yes.
and then you're just like, wait, what?
Wait a second.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait, Grandma's birthday is
Right.
I'm like, what?
Or like two people could have the same exact experience.
But I'm like,
outline.
I remembered it, but you remembered where we went, but I
Right.
didn't. Like
Right.
I thought I had the place. Yeah, it's funny. Like we just like.
Didn't we go? It was a nice restaurant. Didn't we go sit down at a nice restaurant here? I think it was. Yeah, it was Beacon. It's gonna come to me after this.
Yeah.
Fully.
Yeah. Whatever. It doesn't. Yeah. That's not why you're here.
Yeah, we should get to that. We should get to that. I feel like it's been a little bit. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you do
Okay.
and how you got into your path.
Okay. Well, I'm Rayvin, and what I do, I feel like I've never known what I do, and that's the thing. Is like I don't have like this cookie cutter. I have my bachelor's in psychology. I am a 200-hour certified yoga teacher. But the thing about that is like yoga never felt like the thing. Like it didn't feel like, you know how some people talk about yoga and they're like, this just clicks and this is where I learned everything.
Mhm.
It wasn't for me. I love like the movement aspect of it, but it feels too structured for me.
Mhm.
My movement structure comes in like the gym and like I love to run, or I used to love to run. Now I just kind of like it. I've ran like a bunch of half marathons, but I don't run like that anymore. So like I needed I'm still kind of trying to find the thing that works, right? Like you read the books and not one thing is the answer on this journey of self-love, which is basically what I'm trying to get to, is like after everything in my life, like I had a very tumultuous childhood. My like whole thing was pretty, I could remember even being like 7 and being like, it doesn't have to be like this. Like it doesn't have to be so hard. These people are just making things so difficult. And I just told myself like, it doesn't have to be like this. When I get to choose, when I get to leave, like my life doesn't have to look like this anymore. And I thought I would like leave that house and voila, like now I get to choose.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, what the fuck do I choose? Like, I don't even know what that looks like. So I've just been spending the past 10 or so years kind of trying to find what works for me. And meditation has been great. Journaling, I journal a lot. Movement, obviously. And I moved from New York to Florida and I like started a whole new life there. And I didn't know anyone. I just like picked it off a map and was like, this is where I'm going. And I put my dogs in the U-Haul and we left. And I like created a whole beautiful life for myself that
That's
I'm
the dream,
still
right?
trying to figure out. Like I don't have any answers.
Yeah. Does any part of you feel like when you moved to Florida, like that was gonna fix it all? That like just being in a new space, like
Yes and no.
even if it was in the back of your mind?
Yeah, because I had the narrative running in my head of like geography doesn't change everything. Like you go with you. But it also did a lot for me. Like this area held a lot of heaviness of like my stepdad was a terrible person, and just like, you know, small towns, like everybody knows everything, and just like this area just holds a lot of heaviness. So to not be like, oh, am I going to run into them? Am I going to see them? You know, like taking yourself out of that space made a big difference. But it didn't change everything, because I still went with all of my habits and thoughts and ideas and limitations and which I'm always going to have, but like it has been like a unlearning process and it's never going to be over.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, like, at this stage in your life, is realizing that, like, it is a lot of unlearning everything. Everything. Like, you don't ever stop learning. You have to unlearn a lot of stuff, though, and then learn the new stuff to replace it.
And it's also, like, learning that it's a nervous system thing, right? Like, it's a, how do I feel on a daily basis? And I think I feel like my default mode, if you want to say it like that, is like
baseline.
Yeah, is pretty like negative and like sometimes flat and just like not. I'm not like default excited. That was never the energy really around me, right? Like if I'm going up, my mom raised 6 kids. Like she was not like happy, and just not that she wasn't happy, but she wasn't like carefree. Right? Because, I mean, you got 6 damn kids. You can't be. And this is what you're learning from, is like the dynamics that you were in. And our parents weren't mindful, right? Like they didn't have any of this.
They did the best they could, you know?
Yeah. Like they did the best they could with what they had, but like, look how much more we have. So like, it's natural for them to kind of feel like attacked when we say like, hey, our parents didn't think about how they talked and how they had a relationship with themselves, because I learned my relationship with myself from my mom, like or their relationship, like watching all of those things. Yeah. They didn't think about that shit. Like you turned on the news and just like, you know, did what you went every day. Now you Google something, you could be like, what is self-love? Like, what is manifestation? Like, what is, and you could, you have so much more access. Like the internet gave us so much access to everything, like different religions, how different people are in relationship, like all of these things that they didn't have.
Yeah, you could discover things from the comfort of your home.
Exactly.
Whereas like maybe years ago, like doing meditation was just like
you had to go find somebody doing meditation.
You couldn't do yoga on your living room floor. You had to like go to a class, and like that.
Not everybody had the resources, right?
That's intimidating,
right? I mean, I can remember growing up, like we had an encyclopedia from A to Z. Like that you would look up things, like that was how we Googled shit. Yeah. We have so much more access now.
Like where's the K?
Right. I'm looking for kaleidoscope. Like find the K book, and then, you know, how like, they make the damn card catalogs in the library. A lot of things changed. So like of course we're gonna grow and evolve, and more than our parents did, and we're gonna want to do better, but that doesn't mean that they did shit.
No.
I mean, some things were shit, but that's okay. That's life, right?
I mean, I think we've all done shit things to ourselves too. 100%. So it's like it's understandable. You just like you and I talk often about like recognizing that they're humans too, and that like giving them the same grace that you would give your friend, and then like that allows yourself to give yourself a little bit more grace,
and giving yourself the grace that you would give a friend.
Yeah.
Right.
At what point did you start to like differentiate those voices in your head between what was like, because you have to assume that with what you said that a lot of your inner self-talk was molded by those people. How did you develop and like differentiate who you really were from that?
I think I'm still learning that now.
Yeah.
Like I think I'm.
Well, how do you attempt to do it now?
Yeah, I think I'm finally getting there of like with the meditation and just with the daily. Like on the way here, I could have just like let myself get in this thought of like, how am I going to be received? Am I going to show up enough? Is this going to be, you know, like it's been all of these years. Is it going to look like I've grown enough? Right. And instead I just sat there and I like deep breathed into my belly and just was like gave myself the affirmation almost of like, everything's good. Like, you're perfect exactly as you are. Like, you don't have to show up any specific way. Like, these guys don't like, we could have a conversation and not feel like I'm sitting here like under a microscope of like, oh, you're not doing it right. You're not, that's me of being like, you're not good enough. Like, nobody's going to love this. Like, nobody's going to listen, you know?
Yeah, that's what like my self-talk sounds like all the time. When you're setting up, you're getting ready, maybe you're in the middle of a thought of like, and it takes you out of it to be like, who even listens to you talk, bro? You know? What
the fuck do you have to say?
And making that connection just to be like, I think like decent to yourself can be tough.
Right. Right. So I think it's like catching myself in the moment. Because now I have the awareness, right? Like I've had all these years of like thinking about it and reading the books and doing all the things, but it's like, okay, you're doing it still every day. So even being here, I'm with my niece and I'm with my family and I'm like, can I be present? Yeah. Like, can I just enjoy this moment? Because it's going to be gone really soon. Like, we're always in this, like, what's the next thing? How could I rush to something else? You know, I love that we came here and we were like, do you have time? Like, what's
a very important question. Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes we deal with people who they got to get going. But it's like, it's nice to just be like, let's flow into this. And I feel like that was a very seamless transition. Yes. We were just talking and then just like, oh, we've been recording.
Hey,
you know, it's nice. Yeah. But it's nice to do that. And like, I think that sets the tone in other areas of my life, like to not rush through things. And that builds a trust in yourself to like, I know I'm going to get that done. Yes. I know I'm going to get to the next thing. And if there's a problem with any of it, like,
I always figure it out.
And it's learning. Yeah.
It's like, where am I rushing to die?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, where are we going?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's just that daily moment to moment, like integrating that now. Because the meditations are great, but you don't always have like 10 minutes to an hour to sit and meditate.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to talk about that for a little bit though? Like
meditation?
So like, just because my meditations are guided meditations, I do a lot of the stuff on Calm. Like, that's my go-to app. There'll be times where I sit and I'm like, I'm just going to be quiet for like a little while and see what happens. Like, I'll close my eyes for like 20 minutes or like at the end of yoga. But what are some of the types of meditation that you do? I know you do the mirror meditation. You want to walk us through that a little bit too? Yeah.
I'd actually love to ask, because JP said he listened to one this morning. What did you think?
I thought it was incredible. It was great. Yeah, I mean, I'm very much used to the calm ones, but I like to mix it up too. I like to just like, and it was just like.
Now, do you listen to the same ones every day, or do you pick different ones?
They mix it up. Sometimes they repeat.
So I do the Daily Calm and the Daily J. So it's the 10-minute one from Tamara Levitt. Normally, I feel like the Daily J, I'll get a repeat that I've heard before because I've been doing it for 2 years. Like, of course, they're going to have a day where they didn't have a new one. But I feel like, for the most part, you go about 5-6 months before they repeat. So they're always different. It's just a different topic pretty much every day. But the weeks will kind of be similar.
Okay.
So like, if they're talking about patience on Monday, you can kind of assume that Monday through Friday, it's going to be like things about patience, how to develop it, like how to notice you're not being patient, how to give grace to somebody.
Oh, okay, that's great.
You know?
Yeah, like him and I have noticed that like he's more of a creature of habit. He likes to do the same things, and I'm more into like I'm always looking for like something new in it so that it doesn't get stale. And I feel like you're kind of at that point too, where you're just like, I got to switch up my affirmations because like this has worked. I've told myself this, but there's more to. You know, you're always just kind of like looking to tweak it a little bit. Yeah, that 1% better. Yeah.
And that's where the mirror meditation came from, because like I was sitting and I was doing these meditations and I felt like I'm sitting here with my eyes closed and I'm fully still. And sometimes that didn't feel like the best thing to do. It just felt like I was doing it because I was supposed to do it. So I felt like to get more connected with myself, like sitting, I mean, I didn't recreate the wheel here, but it was a progress, like a progression of, I got there trying to find something that worked better for me than just sitting with my eyes closed in a dark room. That like sometimes I'll even like do like some shaking or some bouncing, or like I like to move the energy. Like right now I'm feeling a little like, you know, like you feel that. So instead of
there's energy
like,
in this space for sure.
Yeah. And it's there's an energy in me of like whether it's like an anxiety or like a nervousness, you know, for me, it's like my heart gets fast and like sometimes like my body involuntarily shakes a little bit, you know, and that's just like the buildup of the energy of just like anxious energy or like wanting to, whatever is going on, right? Yeah. Like wanting to show up right.
You're like worried about being in the present moment, and then now you're not worried about it. Because,
but it's not even that. It's sometimes it's just like what I'm talking about is very important to me, and the emotional charge of it just kind of like shows up physically in my body. Yeah. So like I'll sit in front of the mirror, and I noticed at first that like looking at myself was hard. Like holding eye contact was like difficult because like you'll be in a conversation with somebody and you're not holding eye contact. I would even thinking in my relationship, like, what would I want in a partner? Like them to sit down and have like no non-disturbed time of just like, can we eye gaze? Like that's a thing. So I was like, let's just do it with myself and see what happens. And it was so uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, but I like, and then I zoomed out and then I zoomed back in. And I just like had this whole experience of experiencing myself, seeing myself, not just like with my eyes closed and like trying to control my thoughts, but like noticing what come up. What judgment do I have of myself? What am I saying? Like, is it like, oh, your hair looks like shit? Or is it like, oh, that's really pretty? Or is it like, I'm just a human. Like, this is my body and accept it for what it is, you know? So like I would go through this whole progression of like my judgments and step back to a positive judgment and then step back to zoom out of like, you're just a person, you know? And like,
yeah.
Just that perspective shift. So like that's how.
So you discovered this on your own.
Yeah, like
this wasn't something where you were like looking for it and somebody was like, try meditating in the mirror. You eventually got to the point where you set the mirror down. Nobody told you to put it there, and you were like,
I mean, of course I heard of mirror meditations,
but you were like mindful enough to be like, oh wow, like there's something here.
Yeah,
like it's like something.
And then took myself through my own process, and that's kind of what my guided meditations are on YouTube.
Yeah.
Is like it's something that I'm struggling with. And like, what do I need to rewire my inner conversation to be saying instead of what it's saying? Like, what combats what is going on already? And how could I change that?
Yeah, I think that's especially works well for someone who struggles with, what do other people think of me? Am I doing enough? Yes. Yeah. What do I think about anything of myself?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like I could benefit from them, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Like, I think.
Yeah, because I feel like how you think and how I think are very. When you talk about it, it's very similar.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
How I think.
Yeah, you know, like, but that's very interesting to me. That like a lot of the knowledge I've gained, I feel like in this field, is stuff that I've sought out, like from other information sources, and that intrigues me that you were able to like go through trying out different things and getting to something that was like, I got here all the way on my own.
Right.
That's kind of wild.
Or like, I'm only here because this specifically works for me.
Wild. Yeah.
Like I didn't read a book. Well, but it's kind of like a compilation of all the things that I have learned, right? Like I didn't just one day think like I've heard somebody say something here or there, or I learned about self-talk, or I learned about this. And it's like, oh, the way you do it doesn't really work for me. And the way this, like how could I integrate this to myself?
Yeah.
And then you'll realize that there are other people that would fully benefit from how you integrated yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get so stuck of like, who's going to listen to me? Or like, I don't know enough. Like, I can't do all this because I need to go back to school. Or like, you know, when I was talking to you guys and you're like, oh, what are your credentials? And I was like, that just pissed me off for the rest of the fucking day.
Oh,
because
really?
I was like, what do you mean just, Rayvin?
That's
like
just?
I
think yeah.
You're that's enough.
It's a lot.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's
an
like
accomplishment.
Right. And it's enough.
Yes.
So,
and even if you had 0 certifications, it'd be enough, you know?
Right.
And that's like a
but
lot
that
of what
just pissed me off.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like there's a big shift in like when you can start talking to yourself in the right way. Like when I remember when I started talking to myself, like I get to do this versus I have to do this. It's like, no, I don't have to go visit my family. I don't have to go.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I get to go visit my family on Thanksgiving or whatever.
Yes, exactly. I get to come here and like have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I don't have to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like,
because like you could turn it into, oh, I have to go there and this is stressful and now I'm worried about it and how is it going to turn out and how am I going to show up? But no, I get to do this because I want to. Yeah. Because I love to.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is great.
Yeah, like we're already getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I'm loving this.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think that I know that you talk about authenticity all the time. You mentioned the mirror meditations, but like, what does kind of like authenticity feel like to you, and how do you communicate it to like the people that you help? How do you like, because I feel like it's very hard to explain to somebody who's trying to figure out who they are that like, no, like you'll just know when it's right, and you'll know when it feels that way, and you'll know that like this is your authentic self. And I feel like when you're trying to discover that, it's hard to put like a label on that and be like, this is what it feels like, and you know you're in the right place. And it's hard to just not be like, oh, this is like a, you know, you'll feel it and you'll know. Like I feel like when people are introduced to what we're talking about, that's hard. So like how do you communicate to people like, this is how you're going to find the direction that you need to go into?
I don't try to tell anybody that I have the way.
No.
But this is what I'm saying is like, I just try to show up that way, right? Like you said, nobody answered that question of like, who hurt you? And I'm just going to like come out and say it because I'm going to be vulnerable. Like I feel like me not trying to hide something gives someone else the permission to say, like, I think that's where a lot of change happens is like within relationship, right? So like, let's say you have one friend, maybe it's you and Steve, that like holds you accountable to the new person that you want to be, right? Like,
absolutely. I would say that that's totally where we're at. Yeah. Right.
So when I'm working with someone, having a meditation, I'm showing up in a way that like invites them to be like creates the space for them to share their emotions, their feelings, their thought, you know, in like a real way. And because I'm not here trying to like show up as something different either. Like I can name my own of like, I'm nervous to come here. Like, I don't feel like I'm enough either. Like, you know, you model it basically. And I feel like when I watch my stuff back, like I have resistance to watch it. And then I watch it back and I'm like, oh, like it looks like who I really am. Like who I, you know, like it doesn't feel like I'm watching somebody. I'm like, who is that girl? It's like, oh,
you don't
shit,
watch it.
Like,
you don't watch it and be like, why are you
who are you pretending to be? Right.
Yeah, that's good.
I had that problem a lot at the beginning of this podcast when I would like listen to stuff. I'd be like this, because there was still stuff I was holding back and I wasn't being my true self. So I was definitely like breaking like down the wall a little bit, but there was still like a lot to go before I could like, now I'll listen and I'm just like, sometimes the sound of my voice or listening to us talk,
the voice
I'm just like, I don't want to do this right now. I'd rather be doing something else. But like, I can genuinely sit down and listen to us talk and like be like, sounds like a podcast. Where's the good part that I can clip? Like, I'm not worried about us not sounding like we're trying to be something we're not. You know what I mean?
I feel like authenticity is removing the like your worry of someone's judgment and just like allowing yourself to be seen.
Yeah. Well, a big part of self-judgment for me was realizing that like you don't even have a person in mind. You're just thinking of like this kind of like,
it's almost like for me it's the worst person that ever said anything to me. Like their thing is the person. They don't exist.
I can think of one of those people and what they said to me and about what it is right now.
And it could be in like third grade. Or
100%. It's definitely from childhood.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah.
That's the person that's running that negative thought in your head.
Yeah.
And maybe you like call them out. You know, like people talk about having a conversation with their inner conversation of like, Joey.
Crazy. I did that the other day. I was like getting ready to do yoga and I was in my head thinking about a million things and I just stopped and I said it out loud and I was like, who does this matter to? And it just all went mad quiet and I was like, holy fuck, we took over control. I can do yoga peacefully right now.
Yes. Yeah. I caught myself in a mirror meditation once. Like I was sitting there and I was like, okay, you're going to sit here and be present. And I was looking at myself the whole time and I had like one little like off and I was like, okay, come back. And then the next little off was like, I looked at myself. I was like laughing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is where we are right now. Like, we are having a conversation about, this was 5 minutes of just like a stream of what are you thinking about right now? And like, come back. Like, it's okay. Like, this girl is ridiculous. Are you serious? You know? Yeah. Like you would a friend. Like, sit down. Like you're good.
And I feel like having people around you who can be like, dude, like,
Yes.
you know, and like, and I feel like that allows you to kind of like create space, just be like, let's like regroup. You're in your own head right now, or whatever,
100%.
or whatever it is.
Because sometimes you can't see it.
No.
You need somebody else to be that mirror.
Yeah.
100%.
I think that's a big part of me and him talk sometimes about like relationships with this, because you do notice when you start to make those changes and become more self-aware and like you want to be a better person, some relationships you just realize right away, like this isn't working, like we're not aligned, and you move on. But then there's other relationships where you feel like you're trying to change somebody, but what you're really doing is you are that mirror to them, and they're not. It's not because not, like we said, not everybody's ready at the same time. Yep. So like
sometimes
there'll be a time,
can't look at that mirror.
Yeah, and it's just it pushes that relationship away. How do you deal with stuff like that when you know that there's things that are separating?
Well, my life just separated. My 3-year relationship just ended, and it was like, for me, it was a very slow progression of like letting go, of like giving it all you got, and then you hold on to that resistance of like staying longer because you're like trying to put that effort, and you're trying to like, it's almost like when is it enough to just say, I don't have to wait for you to catch up anymore, right? Like, and being that person to make that decision. It's never easy. And I feel like I'm a kind of person that like it takes me a long time to make the decision, but once I've gotten there, of just like, I have journals upon journals of like how I was feeling about the situation, and kind of like having that conversation with myself in and out, in and out. And sometimes I have to go back and read it and remind myself like why I feel that way. And I think it's a big practice of letting go and trusting that like trusting yourself that what you feel is good enough to like act on. Like you don't have to hold on just because whatever story you tell yourself, right? Like I had this, that I never stay, like that I'm always 1 foot in, 1 foot out of relationships. Like, do I not give it enough? But if I really think about it, I give it everything. Right. And then when I finally feel like, okay, like now I need to choose me. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a parent, whether it's a relationship, like when you guys had like your fracture, right? Like it was hard for you to be like, I think
you. I mean, I never really thought about it in that way. That like you were like you were a first-hand witness. You and I were really close when that happened. Yeah, I didn't even really think about that.
And the letting go is the hardest part. And you were able to do that, and now look where you guys are.
Yeah.
So I think it's like that.
You had to let me go.
And it was so, when I tell you, like my heart broke for JP.
Yeah.
He was so distraught over this, and as like you guys are friends for like ever.
Yeah.
And it was such an internal battle of letting go of because
that's
it didn't
when you talk
fit.
about like the mirror. You know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
I by no means did I have everything figured out at that point, but at that point I was saying like I just want something different.
You had to surrender. Right, exactly. You just have to surrender to like,
and I had to try. And I had to. I feel like it was one of the first times that I had like an experience where I had to be like really accept things that were out of my control. On something that was so deeply important to you. And not knowing where you guys were going to end up. And I think that's what it is when you're with that. You just have to practice that surrender, that letting go, and it's easy to say, right? But it took me probably 2 years of just like, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. Now I have to surrender to it isn't it. And not for any other reason than just like, you're a beautiful person, I'm a beautiful person, but we can't be our most beautiful people together. Accepting. Yeah, there's just a point where things get out of your control, and I feel like when you're at a point where you're hoping it would be a different way, or you're seeing that and you're just like aware enough to just be like, no, like this is we just have to like walk away. And like I said, you can, whether, like you said, it can be really in any scenario. It could be a job. It could be whatever.
Yeah.
It could be whatever. As people have relationships with all sorts of things.
100%.
But like, I don't
It's
know.
almost like it steps out of your window of tolerance, right? Like there's a certain point of what you're willing to give and wait.
Yeah.
And everybody that's different.
Yeah.
But if you, that's an interesting question, because like if you sit in that, then doesn't it feel like
You're stuck.
No, not not that like you're stuck, but yes, I mean that's a good point. But I mean that like when eventually like things like go their separate ways, it was never like the last thing that happened. It was like just it was like the build up of it, and like I feel like the biggest change in myself is just like looking at character in people.
Integrity.
And like do like I don't know, like, and it can be a hard thing to do because you're not with people when they're alone, but it's like, I don't know, like, I like to think that the people who I surround myself with try to do the right thing even when they're alone, you know, and that's hard to do, and that's hard to build up that trust.
But I feel like who the person shows up as, you could tell what they do when they're alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it shows up in their character.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Like,
It
and it
shows
builds
up
that trust. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How they show up for you means how, like, and that ties back into like, how do you show up for yourself?
Yes.
That's the best way that I can show up for him
us,
as a friend,
yeah.
or for you as a friend, or
Right.
for anybody.
Your partner,
Yeah.
your parents, even like everybody.
Your family. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about because I've known you for a long time. Like, how has working on things with your family and maybe getting a little bit closer to them, how has that changed the way you look at yourself? Because as somebody who recently has tried to like work on those things and make peace with family members and things like that, because family is so hard. Family is so tough.
And when you say make peace, what do you mean by that?
Just kind of like have tough conversations, or just kind of like choose to spend time and like accept the people who are your family for the way that they are, and that knowing that you can continue to be the person that you are while loving them, but like I don't know, you know what I'm saying?
know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That like how do you like be close with them and the people in your life who you know, like, you know what I mean? Like most of our parents aren't gonna, but like we can accept them for what they are and like try to work on that and show up and realize that you're 50% of the relationship.
I also feel like this is where, you know how we say like in relationship is where you see a lot of big change. I think it's this relationship and showing up with your parents or your family as this new version of yourself. This is something that I always struggle with. Like I always kind of wind up going back to my default, who I showed up in the family, right? Like if I was the one to like always keep the peace, or I was the one to kind of be quiet and like not cause any kind of anything. Like I'm here to kind of like help out and be in the background, right? So to have those conversations, which are hard, that you never know how they're going to be received.
Yes.
I think you have to regulate yourself first of like, this is okay, that I can be different, which is like a deep acceptance before you can even come to possibly get rejected, right? So like you have to stand in a firm trust and love and belief and deservingness of yourself that like, I can even say this. It's been a process for me, big time. My mom moved to Florida with me. So we, before we left, we were on very rocky ground. And her coming down, I have the very vulnerable, open conversations with her that sometimes start yelling, and then there's crying. And then we finally get to a place. The difference for me really is that like, I've learned how to do conflict resolution. Whereas like it was always something happened and then like I stopped talking to you. So the stonewalling is like huge for me. And then everything gets swept under the carpet. And once everybody kind of feels like they've gone back to baseline, then we can like have a conversation again and be cool and pretend like nothing ever happened. So to be able to bring into those relationships, we can have a conversation that might have been uncomfortable, and then I can come back when we've calmed down and be like, okay, like, can we talk about how things went? And like, can we have a conversation about it? Like, how did you feel about it? How do you feel about, like, can we come to a place where we can talk about this after the fact instead of pretending it never happened? So that's been huge. And just getting confidence and courage, really. People always talk about a safe space. I don't think there's such thing as a safe space, but there is a courageous space where you could decide to show up differently and open yourself up to the vulnerability of something new. And you change the dynamic, right? Like you change the dynamic of those relationships the second you show up. And that's kind of scary.
What has your relationship with change been like from the beginning to now? Because as I'm sure you're aware now, change is just always happening, and it's like, but that's still like a lot to deal with. Like I still struggle dealing with that, but I think I'm way more accepting of it now than I was in the past. But I know that's a big thing for a lot of people because you don't want to make any changes because you're comfortable and like you're set in your ways, and I know I'm alive and this is working and I make it to the end of the day every day like this, so why would I switch things up? And that's a comfortable place to be in. But I feel to really live in your life and go on your journey, you have to be willing to just change and change a lot and all the time.
Like change and death are the only guarantee. And I feel like the hardest part of change is like deciding to change, like deciding to make that change. But for me, at least, as soon as I make it, I'm like, I feel like invigorated. Like I feel like that routine that you love so much, I feel like drowns me. Like I feel like I'm more like I need that like little something needs to be a little bit different to keep it like fresh. I have moved so many times and I love just like packing all my shit up, throwing everything away, like restarting, having to move my furniture to somewhere new. Like I love that, like the freshness that change creates. And there's always resistance, right? I stayed in this relationship for 3 years that like I knew long ago was not.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because like I've always been the type of person who always is like moving my furniture around too.
Yeah.
And I don't like moving.
No,
because I'm moving around here, but the idea of moving like somewhere else and throwing my shit in a van has always appealed to me.
Yes.
That's the only reason I'm laughing. Go ahead.
Yes. The change is great.
Yeah, I'm always like maybe I'd be able to edit better if I put my desk in this corner of the room.
And then it's like that could also stop.
If I keep my camera over here, if I put my camera next to the door, I'll probably use it more.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I think like that. And I'm,
yes. Every day.
Absolutely.
Maybe if I put my yoga mat over here, I'll use it more.
Yep.
Maybe this will help for my nighttime. Like always kind of trying to change your environment to aid
Make it easy for you to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the routine sometimes makes it harder because then it's like, I have to do this instead of like, oh, that's new, like I get to go grab this out of this new spot,
And I've gotten like more flexible with myself because I'm like, okay, if I like wake up in the morning, I have to do something first. I'm okay with doing that first before I do my routine because I know that my routine is going to be more like, there's going to be less on my mind if I just get like that one thing that I was supposed to do last night that I forgot to.
Yeah.
If I just upload this thing or I do this, if I just do that now and I'm like, then
and it's also like a trust with yourself, right? I did what I said I was going to do.
Yeah, I said I would wake up tomorrow and I would email that person. And I feel like that for me is just like, all right, I'm starting the day off with that, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hard thing, but it's just like that recognition of priorities and being like, this is important too. Like, and being flexible with yourself to know that like, it'll be better for me for this because I can meditate at any time I want.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and then like knowing the days that like I need to wake up and do that first though is like
How are you with change?
Me, I'm like I'm definitely working on it. I'm getting better at it. Like
I was gonna say, let me ask JP how Steve is with change.
Because like 3 days ago,
I mean, from what I've seen of you lately, I think you're great with change. Of course.
Yeah, I mean, like
you take it as it comes.
Yeah.
I like my routine stays the same, but like my day-to-day can be very, very different. Like I don't really mind it, and like I'm flexible. Like I try and adapt to the conversations and the moments and like what needs to be done like in the time, but like my routine I'm just very regimented on, and like it's one of those things where like, so I'm flexible. If you need me to be somewhere at 6 o'clock, I'll be somewhere at 6 o'clock. But the day before, I'm going to go to bed at 6:30, and I'm going to wake up at 3 in the morning and do everything that I do because I know I show up as the best version of myself after I do that stuff. So like, whereas some people are just like, no, I'm stuck in my ways and I have to do it this way. Like, I kind of have that, but like, I'll do those things that I do in the morning that I'm so strict about. I'm only strict about because I know I can't show up as myself if I don't do those things. Other things, when it involves change, it is what it is, man. I'm just rolling with the punches.
Yeah,
I'm with the
like,
ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But that
I feel like
routine
so much change has happened to you over like even just like the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And like you're always the one pushing me to change. So like
last year at this point, I was still in Astoria. Like I wasn't even moving. I didn't even move home until January. So like for me, my life has just, I think I very much embraced change. And
yeah,
I'm
but then
like,
if you think about it, like how long you and Julianne were together, right? So I feel like there's a point of life, because I feel like what you're asking about more of change was like change in life rather than like your day-to-day schedule. And I feel like there's like these long periods of none. And then you just kind of like...
Yeah.
And then you might get that long period of none again. And then, you know...
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's typically how it works. Like, I mean, like...
And I love when I'm not in that period of waiting anymore, right? Like,
yeah, I like the change.
That period of waiting for the change sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, that does.
Yes.
That's
like
of like thinking that you need to do something different. Like this came at a perfect time because I have been so stuck in like showing up for what I share because I felt so out of alignment with how things were in my life. And I feel like I'm like ending things and moving on, and like even though my life isn't where I want it to be right now, like it's closer than if I was just waiting still.
That's one of the things that I 100% love about doing this is when we sit down, because whatever it is that I air out, like, it's out there now.
Yeah.
I said it. So, like, it's on camera. It's only on me to change this thing. But, like, now I have the motive to, like...
And you have a physical representation of you saying it.
Yeah.
So there's even more that of, like...
Yeah.
So when I had started putting stuff out and I had known, like, where that my life wasn't... It didn't feel like it wasn't clicked. It made it harder for me to keep going because I felt like I was lying. I'm like, okay, I'm talking about all of these things, but like, what are you doing? Right? Because I didn't feel like I was doing what I needed to do. It really wasn't about everybody else looking and watching and being like, oh, what is she doing? And why isn't she, you know? It was about me and how I would talk to myself of like, cool, you're putting out all this stuff, but like, this isn't an alignment. So you're not. So stop lying, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like even with doing the podcast, it's just like, I feel like what we've gotten a lot of positive reaction about is like when things go off the rails and like accepting that and being able to like navigate it and being like sharing stuff that we normally wouldn't share and just being able to be like, no, like that's who I showed up as on that day and that's okay. And as the episodes get more, like we talked about it in the beginning of this podcast about how it was like next week is always another chance to improve upon what we've
how
been
you're
doing.
Like, I'm just feeling so stuck, man. Like nothing's coming up, and it's that pressure too blocks you.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I have to say something so profound.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes people probably just like to hang out. You know, like let me like cook dinner and like just have the podcast on in the background and be like, I'm just hanging out with JP.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, exactly. And then I have to be to myself. I'm just like, do I like sit down and analyze every aspect of the biggest podcast in the world with you know what I mean?
Like,
and then
does Joe Rogan think about that one before he puts it out?
And that's the thing is that it's just like, do you think that like any other meditation teacher sitting there being like, God, I wish that, like, no, it's just like you're watching yourself so much more closely, and it's just like anytime
and then you get a
when
comment of like, oh, I love your voice, and you're like, wow, that's the thing I hated about that.
Exactly.
Like,
I'll say that about exactly. You have the voice for it for sure. Some people do not have it. Like some people do not have the voice to be like like I don't know. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there who'd like to meditate to my voice, but like
probably
maybe I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out down the road. You know what I mean? But like, there's just like sometimes it makes sense for certain people, and then other people it just is like. But that is just like widening that perspective to be like, I may not love this, but like maybe there's something more to it.
Right.
Yeah. That's and it's just like you bridge that gap a little bit more, noticing that like in real time versus being like, fuck.
And just showing up and doing it every week.
Yeah.
Right? That act of like consistently doing something is showing you that you're showing up as a different person. So it's propelling you and giving you that positive reinforcement of like, I showed up last week. Like, I'm sure she's going to show up again this week, you know?
Yeah. It's like, I'd like to show up and talk about like the good decisions I made.
Right. Or talk about how rough this week has been.
I think a big part of being, exactly. But I feel like a big part of me getting sober was that like, I got tired of sitting down here with him and being like, every week I'm like, I probably should stop.
Right.
There's a good stretch of that in the podcast.
And you're probably, exactly. But that's, and that's
but
like
I did
anything.
the same thing. I probably should leave this relationship.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
like,
I've done that. 100%.
How long did you think I should probably stop doing all these drugs, man? Like and it's that waiting period that sucks because you're not honoring what you know
I
is
flushed
true.
mad Coke down the toilet to just go buy more Coke a bunch of times.
That's crazy.
Right.
It's like, that's not even economically sound.
That's so crazy. That was pre-2019, guys.
Yeah. That's how well we were doing at Rivergirl back then.
Yeah, I was doing so good. I was crushing
the fucking, oh man.
Yeah, dude, I sit down sometimes and I'm like,
that was a lot of money.
Oh my God. I could own a timeshare in so many places.
Right.
I like how you went to timeshare.
I don't know.
Owning your own house.
I could own one house or I could own a bunch of timeshares. What do you think was more appealing to 2019 Steven?
Definitely.
He's like, dude, I could just live in a new city. 52 timeshares.
Yeah.
52 timeshares, 52 cities.
Instead, I'd rather put it up my nose, guys.
The question is, what state am I going to go to twice?
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think about stuff like that all the time. How do you make peace with
Eleanor
what?
has a mood.
Yeah, right. How do you make peace with when
You do when your anxiety's calm.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. She's a big best girl. You're being so sweet. How do you like manage the self-talk when you finally make that decision and you dwell on like, why did it take you this long versus like, no, I finally made the decision? How do you not dwell on that, like maybe like time that you feel is gone?
I feel like I've been practicing a lot lately, like self-compassion, which is instead of, you have to catch that, right? Like you're going to feel it. I mean, you could try to stop it, but like how do you allow those thoughts to come in, and then how do you meet yourself in those thoughts of like, if it was your best friend that was going through the exact same thing, like what would you say to her? Would you be like, you dumb bitch, what took you so fucking long? I tried to tell you so long ago that you should have left this, and he didn't this, and then you did this, and then like you don't sit there and do that she wouldn't be your friend. She'd be like, okay, I'm not talking to you again.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I do that to myself. I didn't come here for that.
But then you realize why do I do that?
Right.
Why would I do that for myself? I feel like
it's reminding yourself to like speak to yourself like you're somebody you actually love, like instead of somebody you have to beat yourself up until and be grateful that like I finally did make the damn decision. Like it was hard. It took me this long because it was hard. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like, that was just a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Like you did a really hard thing, and I'm so proud of you. Like having that instead of being like, okay, I see the part of you that's like, you're a dumb bitch. But then like I could also see the part of you of like, why did you stay? And like I see why you stayed. And it makes sense. And I know it was hard to leave. Like, you know, just taking that, it's a process, right?
Absolutely.
Of like, how different does that sound? Of like,
every
you're
day,
a dumb bitch.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, what do you say to yourself? Yeah, exactly. Like,
I'm like, how would you, if you had like a 15-year-old or 16-year-old come up to you and they're like going through their first heartbreak and she was a bitch or whatever and she just treated him like shit, but he loves her so much. Like, would you be like, you're a dumbass? I mean, maybe for a minute, but then you'd be like, man, I get it.
I'd understand. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I feel like you just have to remind yourself to keep talking to yourself like somebody you love. It's so crazy that we all talk to each other ourselves like with so much hate and judgment.
And it's like, you realize the impact that like words from other people and that like you say out loud come from yourself, and then you realize like the deep impact of like how that like when you say that to yourself, it's not just words, it's like a feeling within your body that is like feeding something that is not going to help you be the best version of yourself. So when you think about it, it's the most important voice, but we pay not the least attention, but it's
unconscious.
Yeah, and we give it the most credit, even though it has nothing on us.
Nothing.
And it's all built on these negative assumptions about whatever. I think a big part for myself has been to be like just not like looking at the like being able to just see it from the other person's point of view. It sounds so cliche. We learn it when we're young, but but it's really hard, and just being able to be like, you know what? Nah, I see like where I didn't show up in that relationship. You know, I realize where like I didn't show up as my best, and then that can turn around and be like, you know what? Like I had the ability to go do this today, and I didn't do it. So one of the ways I try to work on that is just like the self-love comes from the action of doing it.
Literally.
Like you can tell yourself thoughts all day long too, and that's great. Like, but until you're doing something, for me, that just never resonated, because it's just like, nah, despite the doubt, you went out there.
And it doesn't have to be something so like big. Like I feel like a lot of times when we're thinking about self-love, like we stand at the bottom of the staircase and we look at the whole thing of like, I need to be this, like, think I'm the most confident person. And like, but it's really just that one thing that you do that's like, I showed up for myself and I did it because I said I would. And it's good enough.
I tried. Yeah, I tried. I
right.
tried.
Yeah.
How do you, like, where do you meet yourself at for perfectionism?
Oof.
Oh, you okay, baby?
Oh, you're the best. This is like the most confronting process.
Yeah.
Of that perfectionism.
Well, that's why I say it, because it's like you mentioned before.
Like you want the lighting to be right. You want the sound to be right. So it stops you, right? It stops me from even showing up. And I feel like that acceptance of first getting into integrity, because now I feel like I can show up. Like I wouldn't have felt good coming here if I didn't feel in integrity with myself and my life. And then having that same compassionate conversation with myself of like, it's okay to look like it's your first time, you know? Or like, I think I even did a YouTube video or a podcast or something, and I talked about how like, if I stop putting stuff out right now, people only see the beginning. Like they will never see how good you can get if you practice over and over and over again. And one day it will look professional and it will look and sound and be, but if I don't show up shitty, nobody will get to see how, because
I think that's the exact difference between me and you when we do this is like, you are very sometimes like, this needs to look perfect. And I think it comes off as like, I don't care. But like, I want it to be fucking perfect too, but I know that like, it has to look like this right now. And I think I'm a little
like
bit...
you feel like you accept that more than he does.
Yeah, like, and I get
I have a hard time accepting that too.
I get where he's coming from, because like, I try and see 5 years down the road.
Right.
Instead of...
It's hard to do that.
Instead of 4 days from now when I have to edit this.
Right.
You know, like...
But when you gotta edit it and then watch it, it's fucking painful.
Yeah, and like...
Sometimes, right?
I feel like I think about that stuff, but I don't think about it when we're doing it.
Right.
Maybe if I can make more of a connection with like, this is what we have today, because I do think that some of the times where you're being a perfectionist, especially in times of like, you're setting up the camera and then you're hopping back there and you're being there. So it's like this full reflection of looking at yourself and being like, this is what you could show up as. And then just being like, well, no, like overall wise, you're doing fine. There might be a little thing that you forget here and there, but like you just learn as you go.
No, that one time I didn't press record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but like, and it's just like I said, man, like there's not a single episode where I sit down where I don't think that like, did I,
Right.
you know,
You have a lot running back here.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be a lot, but also at the same time, it's just like, it's not going to do any good for our conversation or for anybody else.
And Steve's just like, I'm just going to show up, man.
But
Like,
that, yeah,
Like there's a couple episodes
Why?
that I did by myself, and I was like, I just got to do them. Like the only way for them to get done is like for me to do it, and like
they looked good
for a little bit. It was the
looked
only
good, yeah.
momentum the podcast had, because we were at a point where like it was. Just,
I couldn't show up. Yeah,
he couldn't. He didn't know, and I didn't know what to do, but just to keep going, because like I didn't want this to end. But like somebody's got to be there. We can't just have nobody showing up for right now, and like. Granted, it's not going to look like it did when JP did it, but like,
but it's good enough.
I got to get something out there, you know?
And it kept your momentum slowly, right? Like, I feel like this is such, like, you guys working together is such, it's so great. It's beautiful. It's,
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
of course. Especially, like, to give each other when the other isn't able to, like, you know, like JP couldn't show up for whatever reason, and Steve's like, all right, I'm gonna, and maybe there's a day when it'll.
I did a mirror meditation podcast for 15 minutes because the only way I could line the camera up was to have it in the fucking mirror.
I've done that
so
too.
I'm looking at myself.
How was that?
Oh God. I mean, like, you can go back and watch those episodes. You can see how uncomfortable I am doing it.
I recorded a couple of videos like that on purpose.
Yeah, but I'm like, I got to get this done. And I was, at the end of the day, like, those were things that, like, even because he couldn't be there and like it wasn't for him at that time, I had stuff that like
you needed to show up.
I needed to say, and it didn't matter if he was there because the only person that needed to say it was me. So like I might as well just keep
you could have
this
not
going.
released the episode even.
Yeah,
like, you know?
and I was like, but we got to keep it going.
To.
Yeah, but we've learned about following through. Yeah,
that's
but
that
it's just
vulnerability.
like, I need to get it out. Yeah.
I could say it to myself. That's cool, but like once I put it out here.
Yeah.
It's almost like
and
a different
I hopped on the
layer
camera
of
to be like, hey, I was a liar and a cheater for the last 5-10 years of my life. And
maybe
and I was a shitty person and I'm sorry about it. Like, but hey, I just became aware of it. So give me some slack. We're working on it.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
and that's a hard thing to say.
Yeah, but I feel like from that point on, it just made this so much easier. You know?
Felt more in alignment.
Yeah.
You felt like, and I feel like sometimes when people do this, it's like you try to talk around the thing, right? You try to be like if you were to say, like, not say cocaine or anything, just be like, oh, I just, you know, had some
we
trouble
struggled with that in the beginning.
I said partying at the beginning because I didn't want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's sometimes you don't want to name it.
Yeah.
And once you get to that place where you could be like, all right, I'm okay to be open because this is really what's true. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to hide behind like talking around the conversation. You know, there's like, obviously you want to be respectful to the other people involved. And then you're also thinking about like, shit, what if they watch this? Like, what are they going to say? Like, if you talk about your parents, like, oh, I don't want them to feel shitty. I don't want them to like.
But me and him have talked specifically about the fact that like, we can talk about whatever we want, vulnerably,
as long as we're willing to say it to those people.
Yeah, as long as like people aren't finding stuff out from this.
Of course,
you know what I mean? Like that to me is, and that just rides the line of that. Like, well, yeah, like really, like anybody who I would talk about here on, like, I wouldn't bring. I would be having personal conversations with them before. Like,
yeah, but they might not, if they do watch it, they might not like to hear the reflection. You know what I mean? Like, you always, I think about that, even if,
absolutely.
They probably won't even watch it, right? Like, they probably don't give a shit.
Yeah. You know why I said that? Because I knew that Julianne was never going to watch those episodes. But, like, I needed to say it. And if somebody had said it to, like, seen it and said it to her, like, I already told her, you know, like I said what I had to say. So like it is like what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I would talk freely about my mom on here because I had a conversation with her that was like, let's patch this up and figure these things out. So it's just like anything I know, like anything that I would say on here would just
reiterate
the
that
truth.
conversation.
Yeah, it's the well, not even that. It's just like I'm speaking truthfully and I'm speaking from the heart, and it's coming from an honest place. It's not coming from a place where like I'm coming out to get you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that was really hard for me in the beginning.
Yeah.
Was like talking about my personal life and like what there was to share and what there wasn't. And I feel like a lot of that was just kind of like shame around decisions that I was making that didn't line up with what we were preaching. And like it's all an evolution. We never pretended to be perfect, but I just like wasn't showing up in a way that you wanna get up maybe? I just kind of like wasn't showing up in a way that allowed me to like talk about what was going on in my life, because like I didn't want to talk about it then, because I was like, I know that it's going to make me face it right now. And I had to like go through it on my own before I was willing to come on and be like, fuck, man. Like, I haven't been looking out for myself.
How do you feel like your relationship with shame is? Both of you.
I thought you didn't have any questions.
I do.
I mean, like,
No. You wrote,
He's like, nope.
we were looking at your questionnaire yesterday. No. Yeah.
you want to go first? Because
I can
like,
go
honestly, like, I don't think I have
A relationship?
I know. I'm just like, I got to think about
We can
how
cut this if
Yeah.
this is...
No,
if
I
this
need to
is
think
too-
about-
No.
I need to think about the question before I can answer.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I have no problem going first. So I feel like shame for me feels like, oh God, it definitely most certainly like immediately brings up stuff from like my childhood, but I'd say like specifically like my teenage years, and I think it's like, I've like, there's really only one way to say it. Like, I've always felt a lot of shame around relationships and what happens in them because of the environment that I grew up in, and how the outlook of relationships, and the fact that I didn't have a great example of what like love looks like. So like sometimes for me, like, I think shame makes its way in all sorts of ways, but I think for me it makes its way in specifically in the way of that, like, attacking me for repeating a pattern that I know is bad. Like, and like sometimes that's stuff that comes from me, that it's like, oh, you did this in a last relationship and you did that. Or it's like something that like, oh, you saw one of your parents do that to the other one. So for me, it was just kind of like making peace with, I'm the only one who can control like how I feel about these things, and that like if I don't start showing up, then I'm going to feel even more shameful. So for me, it was kind of like recognizing like what can you take action on that is going to help you not feel ashamed of like, you know, the choices you're making. But then the other side of it is like accepting a part of you that is like, I formed this belief when I was younger, and then now it's made its way into my relationship with this friend or this partner, or maybe it's made its way full circle back to one of my parents or my brother or somebody like that.
I think shame is like at the basis of a lot of like self-love and this inner conversation, and like what you don't want people to see, it's because you're ashamed of it. So I feel like working with it is a gigantic.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it is tied to, like I say, I putting like the value of what somebody else thinks of you, and like specifically talking about romantic relationships, that like that other person's opinion of you or how they treat you is more important than how you treat yourself. And then like going down a path of you defining yourself by the people that you pair yourself with, you know?
Yeah.
My relationship with shame is like, it's different now than it was for a very long time. And I think I'm very free of it now, because I had things happen to me when I was a child that I didn't realize. I was shame driven probably from, or like young, like the shit that happened to me happened when I was young. So I was probably like 8 or 9, and it's been like that until I probably got sober, because like, I think when I got sober, I realized I was going to have to deal with a lot of the trauma that I went through as a kid, and like finally face it head on. And I've told him and I've told Desiree what I needed to, like what happened, and it's helped me work through it in a way that now when I start to feel that way and it comes up and it makes me think of all of the things that have happened in my life and the shit that I am ashamed of that I've done, I realize that it's just because there was a child that got hurt and nobody knew about it, and nothing like was done about it. So everything I did from that point on was just like a reaction to that 7-year-old not having any support about what had happened. So like, I don't know. To be honest, like now I feel like shame-free all the time.
Yeah.
Like I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I know what happened to me when I was a kid, and like I've dealt with it, and I've handled it, and I've made steps to correct it. You know, so like,
and grown so much.
Yeah, so I kind of just like I don't feel it anymore. But like I'd say from like probably 8 to 28, like everything just made me, that was the voice in my head.
Yeah.
That with my ego was just driving everything.
The addiction, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all came from just trying to forget about that thing that you were so ashamed of.
Yeah.
How do you think that like your ego ties into shame? How do you like view that? Like,
How do I view shame?
yeah, and just how does kind of like your ego, like, I guess maybe those are two separate questions, but like, what's your relationship with your ego?
I feel like I try to be aware. You know, now you have the awareness, and to understand like what's driving the ego. Is it shame? Is it fear? Is it...
You and I talk about that all the time.
Because, and when the shame or the fear is driving the ego, I feel like that's when things come up ugly, right?
Yeah.
You're charged, you're reactive instead of like responsive, because you're trying to hide behind something, right? Like there's something you don't want to talk about.
Mask.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and I think that's where this like authenticity, this vulnerability, like I really try to show up in that way, because you take all that power away from the ego of the fear and the shame behind it. But I think for me, the shame comes from like feeds the not enoughness. It feeds the you shouldn't be able to do this. It feeds the who's going to listen to you, right? Of just like, I don't remember a time growing up really where it was like I was built up. It was more torn down. So, and it was like about all kinds of things, like you're not smart, you're not pretty, you're not whatever, you know? So, and the shame like intertwined in that, right? Like this is a bad thing if you're not like smart enough, or you can't do this, or like humiliation was a big thing that was like growing up. Like there were 6 of us, so there was this like, and I cried the most. So like,
where are you
I'm the second oldest.
Okay.
So I was like the easiest one to pick on, because I always wore my like emotions and feelings like really close to the surface. So all of that really ingrained a lot of shame of like not wanting to be seen and not wanting people to like just like make myself small. So like showing up is a big almost like act of rebellion to that shame of like, here I am, like listen to the shit that I have to say, you know, like it's okay that I could say something that maybe in 5 years won't be true, you know, like that's also what goes in, is like, how am I going to look at this in 5 years and be like, oh, you dumbass, you know? And then it's like, okay, that's your inner bitch, and we need to bring in your best friend to be like, you're showing up, and in 5 years this is going to look so beautiful, and it looks great now too, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
Of like, you don't have to be ashamed to like not show up as who you are, like you're good enough just like this. So, yeah. I think it's interesting, like the heaviness that you've been bringing up shame. Like you feel the difference.
Oh,
yeah.
In my head,
There's always a point when
in my head, I was like, did their music playing and the music stop? That's what I was just thinking in my head.
Right? Like you felt that weight.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Do you feel? Because for me, also, shame makes its way into how I view myself as far as like a career and like what am I doing with my life?
Oh, of course. I hate that question.
Yeah, and for me, it's something that ties in because it's like obviously like our world has made a lot of strides, but like the era that we grew up in is not much different, but it was a place where like men had to be providers and not show their emotions. And we both grew up as like very sensitive people.
Yeah.
So like,
did you feel shamed for your sensitivity?
Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Not by like my family or anything like that, but just as like a dude in general. In general,
like kids growing up. I can name 3 kids in junior high that I was friends with, but like what they said to me definitely made me feel like shit.
How do you feel like? I know you're asking me a question, but this is.
Go ahead.
It's so interesting to get a guy's perspective because you guys guys don't normally. I mean, now I feel like they're having the conversation now.
It's starting, starting, and it's much better.
Do you feel a difference now from then of like being vulnerable and sensitive and like allowing space for that part of you?
I think my younger self would be proud that I'm like, because it's basically standing up for the kid that I didn't stand up for when I was 12. You know, like
I used to run from like being there for somebody like in that way. Like I would show up for somebody like I didn't want to have like uncomfortable conversations, and now. Whether it's a close friend or even just like, you know, a random person, you kind of can just, you can like, I offer myself up versus being like, I don't want nothing to do with this. It's like, oh, like you know,
your avoidance isn't so much.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've wanting to make someone feel less alone versus like, wanting other people to feel like how I felt. So I feel like, especially for guys, I try to be just like that thing, like, hey man, like it's okay. Like I talk about crying all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I try to talk as much as I can about going to therapy. Or, you know, and
do you cry though?
Do I cry?
Yeah, like you say, you talk about crying all the time. Do you like have a conversation with your friends and cry?
We cried yesterday.
Yeah. Right. I'm just asking.
Yeah, dude. Like, I'm walking the walk. Or
I'm not saying you're not.
I'm shedding the tears, brother.
That's why they won't let him go to the bar anymore, guys, because he's sitting there like. We don't want to hang out with JP no more because he just cries all the time.
I've edited myself many times now,
really?
Crying, and I used.
I do remember that one that I watched.
Yeah,
that
and
you
it's
were
happened
crying
for
on
the
pod.
time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that one was a deep one. That one was that one. I still look at that episode.
I'm a fan, guys. I watch.
The fan, episode 14, getting vulnerable with JP.
Hey,
yep, that's the one. But yeah, we've done it a bunch of times.
Yeah,
you know, like and.
I've cried all week this week.
Yeah.
Every single day. Like at least once. When I was running.
I cry at movies, like all the time.
When I ran on, what's today? Today's Wednesday. When I ran on Monday, I ugly cried. Like a cry I haven't had in a while. Like I knew I was processing something because I was like, while I was crying.
Steve, mic me up.
I was like, fuck.
I was at a golf cart parade the other day, like a Christmas thing, and I'm standing there. I'm like, why am I gonna cry? Like I just, you know, sometimes
little
things.
Yeah, I'll watch like I'll pull up little videos on social media. Sometimes will get me like.
It used to take the end of the greatest game ever played with Shia LaBeouf and his dad to make me cry, but now it's just pretty much anything.
It's a lot. Yeah, exactly.
That's the Folgers commercial. We turned into our parents.
Exactly, and like I don't know that there's no other way that I can describe it other than just being like I feel lighter, and like there's just noticing how like that shows up like in your body, like what that feels like, and just like knowing that you have to release it. But I guess like I don't know. But that's the inner voice of you saying that like, oh, I'm not the best example of why am I the one talking about crime, but it's just like I just say it because it's just like this is what it is. I was just like, if you want to check me in some other areas as being a man, go ahead. You know, like I guess like if you want to.
But I feel like that's what's like being asked of men now.
To
is
show up.
For them to show up in a more emotional, vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's weird that you say that because the episode that we recorded before this, we asked the guest who just became a father recently, what does it look like for you to be a man? And he said, I think now it's just showing up. So
yeah.
That's synergy, brand synergy.
Check out our episode with Joe Fry.
That's so funny. Yeah, I have to say your like interview skills are on point. I'm very impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That was in the first episode. That was what we were both like. We want to get good at interviewing people. Yeah. And then we did 39 episodes by ourselves.
You interviewed each other.
Yeah.
It was practice.
Yeah. But I think for a while we just had to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I like the track of being on shame, so let's just keep going on it. What do you feel? What do you feel about? Just because I feel like that, but I do feel like it's something that not a lot of people talk about, and there's so many feelings surrounding it, and people's emotions show up in that way. How do you feel like shame shows up for you in terms of your relationship to money? Because him and I, like right off the rip, will tell you that like we both struggle with like what it means.
Yes.
Tying back into the whole like provider thing, everything. Like
for me right now too, especially, I sometimes feel like I used to make so much money when I was miserable and like I was doing the worst things, and I'm like, I can't make money unless I go back to being a scumbag, and like it's very much like made it a rocky situation. I do suggest reading Abundance by Deepak Chopra though.
Okay,
I just read that and I think it's helped. It's definitely started to help a little bit.
And it's funny because I just journaled about this the other day about how like there's this unconscious like underlying feeling of like, if I live a life that feels very free and very abundant and very like, just like the life that I want to live, where I have money to spend and I can go wherever I want, that
comfortable,
that I won't be as accepted. Like I won't be as relatable. I won't be as like, it'll be looked at as like, oh, must be nice kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And
that's the kind of podcast we're trying to be. Oh, it must be nice to just be podcasting. Yeah, that's what I want.
But people would say that at the point where you're like, yeah, but you didn't see me make fucking 100, 200.
The Chris Williamson picture I sent you.
However many, like you weren't there on the deck when we, you know, you weren't there on the deck when we thought we were recording through regular headphones. Like, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I feel like that...
And that's just like, you just have to like separate that, like that's
a belief.
Yeah.
Really is the problem, is that's a belief that stops me from either showing up or believing that it's going to happen, believing that I'm worthy, that when it does happen, that like, it must be nice. Can I be like, yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And not be like an asshole, right?
Yeah.
But be like, do I have to, when somebody says must be nice, can I just understand that that's a reflection of themselves and how they feel about that? Because it's how I feel too. Like I could look at somebody and be like, oh, must be fucking nice to just be able to, like, what's it like to be rich? Like, what's it like to be, you know, like have all of the, and do something you love and not have to work, you know? Like even I'm here, but like I work from home. I'm kind of like working while I'm on vacation. And like some of the guys called me and they were like, you're working? I thought you were like on vacation. And I don't feel like I'm 1099, so like I don't get paid vacation. So I don't feel, I just moved, I just ended this relationship. Like I don't feel like I have the freedom to just be like, okay guys, like I need a couple of days off, like no big deal. But how different would that feel in my body to be like, oh, I'm going to New York, like no big deal. I'll be back in a couple of days, guys, and I'll take care of what I have to take care of when I get back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all this belief.
And knowing that you're worth that is like, and that like,
we talked at the beginning about the affirmations thing, and I think it's interesting because you keep going back to, especially with the energy and then feeling it in your body. And I've read so much about that as like, I think you can do the affirmations all day long and try and like, you get the thought process there, but the body is also your vehicle through this. So like when you have feelings come up of scarcity, it's impossible to get the thoughts to line up with how you feel in your body. Yes. What do you think is the best way, or what are ways that you try and change the way that you feel things in your body when you have those situations?
Breathing is huge. That like, even when I was driving here, I noticed like I was taking very shallow breaths and I took like really deep belly breaths and I was like, oh, that just feels so, and you take a minute to pause and just be like, am I super tense right now? Like, how does it feel? Like asking myself that instead of just going off of this, like, it's really just what you felt in the past, right? Like normally I would come here and I would be super anxious and I would just, and noticing how things make you feel. I feel like people just go through and don't even notice like, oh, this made me this. All of a sudden I started talking about money and I just like tensed up, or all of a sudden we started talking about shame and it just felt so heavy. And like, it's a tuning into yourself. It's getting, I feel like this whole process is just like getting closer to myself instead of wondering like what everybody else, which of course everybody else's energy affects me, but like, how is it affecting me? And naming that of like, oh, this feels heavy. Oh, this feels tight. Oh, this, can I like stop and breathe here, instead of having this basically practiced reaction to it of like, oh, I've always felt tight around money. I've always felt like it's never enough. I've always felt, can I decide like, is that really true? Like if I look around,
the belief system is huge.
Yeah, I go to the beach every week and I pick up shells. Do I ever go to the beach and think there's never going to be shells? No, there's always going to be shells.
Goddamn.
Or like when the or like I used to live like right on the water, and I would go out and I would just watch all the birds in the morning come out to eat, and I would be like, does any of them like be like, oh, I wonder if tomorrow when I wake up like I'll have enough fish to eat.
I think about that all the time. Like the grass isn't fucking trying to grow, bro.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I sitting here like thinking about, you could lay in bed at night and think about, oh, how am I going to pay this? Do I have enough money here? Do I have enough? And it's like,
that just puts that feeling more into your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of that feeling of expansiveness of like, oh, there's shells and there's plenty more and there's fish and the fish are having more babies and I'm just going to have food when I wake up in the morning. Like you expect it to be there.
Tomorrow I'm going to meet someone who's going to help me make more money, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's like rewiring of a whole different way of living.
Yeah.
Instead of being like restricted and scarce and like, I'm never going to be, ask yourself like, oh, I need to get a couple $100. Like, what's a couple ways that I could do that?
Yeah.
Instead of like, there's only one way. I can only go to a 9 to 5 and that's the only way I can get the money. That keeps you real stuck. You're in a box that has a lid on it and walls and you're stuck, man.
Yeah.
You know, like entrepreneurship it could be very lucrative. It takes a very long time to get there. It takes a lot of patience. It takes, and there's also a world of possibility of how much money you can make.
Yeah. I think that why for a long time I struggled with, because like money and business are obviously very tied together, that even when I tried to start doing my own business, I didn't think of myself as a business owner. I saw myself as the employee, and that somebody needed to like give me an opportunity versus me going out there and getting one.
Right.
And I was, and just like sitting there and being like, why won't somebody give me an opportunity? Like, well, your camera sits in the, you know what I mean? Like you're, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I didn't do nothing, but I just like, I had that like me chasing success via something I love just wasn't possible, or that like I didn't deserve to like have that as my lifestyle, that I didn't deserve to be like, no, I just like, I shoot stuff when I want to, and if I can't do it, you know what I mean? And like
the freedom. Like we don't want money, we want freedom.
Exactly. And I think about that all the time. I'm like, like the numbers itself, like I understand that they exist, but it's just like, I'm not you know what I mean? It's just, it's a matter of just looking like waking up in the morning and being like, do I get to
do what I love?
Yeah. And do I have enough? Do you have enough to like buy dog food? Can I feed myself? Can I do something nice for my mom?
Or do I spend 12 hours away from the people that I love the most? You know, like, do I spend more time with the people I work with, or do I spend more time with my kids and my family and my damn dog?
Yeah, exactly. And just like not getting caught up in, like you said, that, oh, there's only one way I can do this, you know? And that just ties back into, I think, the value about yourself, which is saying that like, I grew up watching my dad love what he did, but not love his job. So I thought that like, oh, if I can create something where I'm kind of doing it for myself. But then I think in the back of my mind, I kept thinking that like, yeah, but like you can't provide and be successful and do what's best for yourself without like sucking it up. And like now,
I can't be a cameraman because my dad wasn't a cameraman.
Or anything. And then, exactly. And then like looking back and being like, well, no, like, that's kind of like exactly what you did while you were trying to figure all that stuff out. You were just working at shit that you hated so that you could figure it out.
Right.
You know? And then I just tying back into like not giving yourself a hard time because it took you till now to realize it. And he's like, just thinking about it in the way of like, well, maybe those opportunities would be squandered. And
like my dad used to always say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
and he hated his job. And so did my uncle. And
what did he do for work?
He was a mechanic in the MTA.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And my uncle did, I think...
Definitely not a flexible schedule.
No, not at all. But he loved motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
And he built motorcycles and he raced motorcycles. So, like, he was in the same kind of thing. Like, he was doing mechanic work, right?
Yeah.
But him and my uncle would always say it. And they hated it, their job.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched my uncle go and have to retire and be like, I don't want to retire now. Like, I don't know. I'm so institutionalized. Like, I don't know what I would do with my time.
It's like coming home from prison.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he goes, I eat lunch at the same time.
It's like coming home from the Afghanistan. Like, God, I just missed the bullet shells.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's real though.
Meanwhile,
it's real.
you hated it the 30 years that you worked for.
But it became a hate that you were comfortable with.
Yes. And it's like now so you're instilling this new idea into me of like, oh, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. You don't want to hate your job. Like, this is the narrative. But you're not showing me how to do it. Mm-hmm. So here I am, like, thinking, like, oh, I need to do what I love and I'll never work a day in my life. But how do I do what I love when I just watched you work in a job you hated for 30 years?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, but you didn't follow that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now it's like this fear of, like, oh, if I do what I love, how do I make money? How do I provide? How do I...
Yeah, and the deserving of it, of being like, and especially if it's in something where like you're helping people. Like, for instance, like you showed up here and I pulled my camera out and you're like, this is the future. Like, everybody needs this. And I'm like, I should be saying that to myself every day.
Yeah.
There should be, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And rewiring those beliefs around it. Like, and I'm getting there. I really do think I'm getting there. But it's like, you realize that it's just like, oh, like, not everybody is so fucking judgmental of my work.
And not everybody knows
and not everybody
you know.
And not everybody thinks that I'm worthless in terms of money like I do. You know? Not everybody, I'm like, this is what the project costs. Like, okay. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Shit.
Oh, wow. If they believe it, I should probably fucking believe it. Like,
Right.
You know?
Right.
But then, like, you gotta, like, just, like, I feel like you dig deeper because there's roots in that.
Of course.
That, like, you think it's just about money, but it's deeper than that. And then you just realize that, like, it's just another, like, I love
another level.
The seashell analogy.
Yeah.
It's like,
There's always more.
So I'm going to go out there. Yeah, I was going to get another opportunity. Yeah.